Welcome to a new week here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Micciche. This past weekend, I was camping in 100-degree heat with my kids, while my husband had the wisdom to stay home in the air conditioning with our youngest. And this past week, I was busy packing and stuffing 4 bikes, 3 camping totes, 2 propane tanks, and a partridge in a pear tree into our minivan. So instead, I was super busy. It's the end of summer. It's a crazy time. It's like back to school, everything. I've got lots of excuses, but instead of the shorter daily episodes, I'm mixing things up a little bit this week. It's a little less work on my end. And so I'm bringing you instead one longer episode. Now, one of the realities of being a financial advisor is unfortunately death. Clients die, and it usually happens at least a few times a year, maybe, 2 or 3 times a year. I'll have a client that passes away. And when it does, and there's a surviving spouse, part of my job is to make the financial transition as seamless and stress-free as possible. Because when you're grieving the death of a spouse, the very last thing you want to worry about is money. Or worse, maybe the power getting shut off because you couldn't figure out how to log into your account just to pay the electric bill. These are unfortunate realities, especially when the spouse who died is also the spouse who managed the finances of the household, made the investment decisions, paid the bills, did the taxes, etc. Now, over the years, I've helped many widows and widowers through this transition, and I've developed an informal widow's financial roadmap that I'm really putting into concrete, real life. I think about these things in my head, but I gotta put it all down and create an actual roadmap so that when my clients have a spouse that dies, and actually, frankly, as you'll see this week, you gotta do this stuff before one of the spouses dies. If you do that before something happens, before you get sick, before you become incapacitated or pass away, then it makes this transition for the surviving spouse much, much easier. If you don't, your spouse may be left without the information they need to keep the household running smoothly, and the stress coupled with the grief creates a lot of confusion and chaos. All right, so before I get into that roadmap, if you're new to the podcast, I just want to give you a quick intro. I'm the co-owner of True North Retirement Advisors, a fee-only fiduciary financial advisory practice managing over $450 million in client assets. For the last 17 years, going on 18 years, actually in just a few days, I've helped my clients retire with confidence. And on this podcast, I take all the complex retirement planning questions you have and turn them into clear answers. And I do so typically in just a few minutes each and every day. So you can spend less time stressing about your money and more time living and enjoying your retirement. Now, if you know someone who would benefit from this week's topic, maybe someone you know who has a spouse who is in ailing health, a spouse who has recently passed away, please share the show. And if you have a burning question about your own retirement, you can go to truenorthra.com, and there you can book a free 15-minute call with me. Okay, let's get back to the widow's financial roadmap. I'm going to say widow a lot this week, which implies the husband died, the female spouse is left to pick up the pieces. He was the one managing the money. Just a quick acknowledgement that money roles and marriage roles, they're as unique as the relationship of the marriage. Different spouses will handle different aspects of the finances. It's not always the male spouse in a marriage, and the male spouse also isn't always the one to die first. So there's lots of different roles, and I just want to acknowledge that. But just for simplicity's sake, I'm just calling it the widow's financial roadmap. So don't get mad at me if I seemingly leave out the widowers. I don't mean to. It's just easier that way. Okay. So let's talk about the roadmap. I'm going to lay this out in order, what I would do first, what comes next, etc. Hopefully, you've already made some progress on some of these items. They're not particularly complicated. It's not like you have to go out and work with an attorney or hire somebody. These are all things that you can easily DIY yourself. But my hope is that if you haven't already checked off all these boxes on the roadmap, that I'll give you some good ideas and give you some quick wins for what you can do to fill out your roadmap and make it more complete. Or if you haven't started, even better. Got to get moving on that. This is super critical. If you're married and you don't have something that looks even remotely close to a widow's financial roadmap, you got to get working on it. Because like I said earlier, it just creates so much chaos in the surviving spouse, especially if you are the one listening, like you're the one listening, you're the one who probably handles the finances, the investments, etc. Make sure that you are setting your spouse up for not as much chaos after you pass, especially when they're grieving. That just seems cruel. We don't want to do that. Step number 1 in the roadmap, create a financial inventory. I've talked a lot about this on the podcast before, several times. It is worth repeating though. A financial inventory is essentially a table of contents for your finances. It should include your bank accounts, your investment accounts, and not just a list of these things, but it should have the balance, the account type, the financial institution where these accounts are held. You want to include insurance and annuity policies. You can also include a will or trust because, your spouse needs to know where that's located, who the attorney is. Hopefully they're not retired, where they can get a copy if they need it. You could also include Social Security information here. You could have tax returns. Another good one is your marriage certificate and then eventually your death certificate. So the main thing though is to have a inventory list of all of your various accounts and insurance annuity policies. That's the core of this. And it's helpful too to include like the last 4 digits of the account number so that the spouse can kind of match up the accounts and importantly where they're held, especially if you have different accounts in different places. It can be very messy to clean up that after a death. And without this inventory, assets can be forgotten or lost. Maybe you still have a 401k at a former employer. Your spouse may have assumed that you just rolled that over to an IRA when you left years ago. And if you didn't, how would they know? And without the documentation, that money can go unclaimed for years and years and years. And you may never benefit, or your spouse may never reap the benefits of that asset and being able to draw income from that in retirement. The inventory, I mentioned this earlier, but it should also include a list of your key advisors and their contact information. So this would be a financial advisor, a tax advisor, attorney, insurance agent. It could be, as simple as like, here's the phone number for the bank branch that I go to. If you have a personal banker, which I don't know anybody who does anymore, unless you're if you have like a business and you're a big wig. But us normal people don't even have that. But I digress. Okay, one mistake though I often see, particularly later in life, is not consolidating accounts. So I use the 401k example. That's a perfect example because people will leave money scattered across 5 different financial institutions. You'll have like 4 different bank accounts, an online high yield savings account because they offered you a teaser rate and now you keep money there. That is a recipe for disaster. So the more accounts you have, the greater the chance your spouse is not going to be able to find those or access them. Once you've created your financial inventory, maintaining it is pretty darn easy. You just have to update it once a year, update it when you change accounts. But even if you forgot to do that and you just set a calendar reminder once every 12 months to do that, it allows you to note any new accounts or accounts you may have merged, make sure all the contact information is correct. It takes less than an hour, probably less than 30 minutes if there haven't been that many changes. And this is the single most important step you can do for the long-term financial health of your surviving spouse when we're talking about building this roadmap. Making sure that they know that the accounts exist, where they are, how to access them, who to contact, etc. A financial inventory is going to take care of all of those things for you. Again, it's a table of contents. It doesn't have to include all the details and statements and all that information. It's just a list. It's very simple to put it together. Step number 2 on your financial widow's roadmap is ensuring cash flow needs are met. in the event that a spouse dies, it's very important. Make sure those bills get paid. One of the problems that I see a lot, especially in the digital age that we live in, is that certain accounts are paid manually. Maybe you write a check. Certain accounts are debited automatically from your bank account. Other ones are tied to a credit card payment over here. So there's just a lot of moving parts to paying bills. And there are numerous things you can do to simplify that. And that's a topic for another day. But we want to make sure, as it relates to this topic, that those bills are getting paid. So your spouse needs a list of all of those recurring bills. And what I find easiest in kind of thinking through this and putting this together is similar to what you do if you were creating a budget. So you have a line item like, this is what I pay for utilities. This is what I pay for the mortgage. This is what I pay for homeowners insurance. And you have the approximate amount. Those bills can vary. It can change, and even as you like, this is what I spend on groceries, and this is all helpful information. So I would think of it as creating a budget, and then you're going to put the amount in there. You want to put the name of the bill and the line item name, how that is paid. So there's subscriptions. Is it ACH? Is it a check? Is it paid from this credit card over here? So you get miles. Also, the due date of that bill, if it's a regularly recurring, like a monthly bill or something like that. And then the frequency. Not every bill is a monthly thing. So it's very similar to a budget, but it outlines all the things that get paid, how they get paid. And when you put that together with the financial inventory, it becomes a lot easier to step in immediately, manage all the incoming, outgoing flows of the household. We don't want the lights getting shut off because you couldn't figure out how to pay the bill. We don't want the mortgage falling behind. These can add tremendous amount of stress to an already stressful and grieving situation. Now, you also want to document all of the money coming in. So that would be Social Security, pensions, if you're taking withdrawals from your portfolio, how often, how much, any other income sources you have, if you have rental income, et cetera. That way, that's why I say cash flow. We want to ensure the cash flow needs are met. That's step number 2. So it's money going out in the form of bills and also money coming in the form of income. Now, I'll come back to that because like when somebody dies, there's changes to pension, Social Security, things like that. Step number 3 on the widow's financial roadmap is setting up a password manager. Now, if you remember nothing else from this episode, remember this: set up a password manager. A password manager securely stores all of your logins for all of your accounts. So you only need to remember one master password. And there's lots of different password managers out there. Some of the more popular ones are 1Password, NordPass, Dashlane, LastPass. Okay, these are all very popular password managers. I use a password manager. I absolutely love it. I have no idea actually what I did before these existed and before this tool came around. It is so valuable, not just for your surviving spouse, but also when you're alive. It really reduces the need. You don't need to remember dozens of passwords. And importantly, it removes the shortcut that a lot of people use of using the same exact password for a bunch of different logins. It's frightening how many people use the same email password, Facebook password, bank account password, 401k account password. Like they're all the same. You can have your own password manager account. And as long as you and your spouse use the same service, you can usually do one of a couple of things. You can share passwords and you can do so very securely. So they have their own login, you have your own login. And if there are certain accounts that you both need access to together, you can share passwords for those accounts. You can also create usually like a trusted contact in those password managers, and that allows your surviving spouse to then get access even if they didn't have access to those things while you were living. Now, from a financial standpoint, this is really important. I had a situation recently with a loved one when my father-in-law passed away. My mother-in-law was unable to figure out how to get logged into an important account that she needed access to. And so it was very frustrating because she couldn't figure out how to reset the password, or like she could, but like it was going to his email address and she didn't have access to that. And so a password manager and giving access through that in a secure way to your spouse, to your digital life is very, very important. There's bank accounts, investment accounts, bills, email, social media. One thing that comes to mind that I think is really important is photo storage. I store all of my precious memories in the cloud. And if your spouse already doesn't have access to your photos or even some of those sentimental things and they're held digitally, then how are they going to access those? It could be gone if something happens to you. Even if it's not lost forever, they're still going to spend hours digging through paperwork, file boxes, just trying to figure out how to reset the damn password. And they're going to be cursing you if you die. Okay, now with a password manager, it's just organized, it's super accessible. You can share logins, easy peasy, and it takes a very little time to set up. And it's actually not a daunting task. I've had people who are like, that sounds like a lot of work. I have 100 different websites that I use and all these different passwords. Well, it's really simple actually. All you do is once you download the password manager, if you do it correctly, you can attach a browser attachment thingy. And it's smart enough to pop up like, oh, do you want to, and it'll prompt you. It'll say, do you want to save this password? And you're like, well, yes, I do. And then you can go in and create a new password and you just do that one by one. It's something that it might take you a few months, but after a few months, you'll be cruising and you'll have all these unique passwords. And it wasn't this big, long, daunting project. You just chipped away at it a little bit at a time. Step number 4 of the Widow's Financial Roadmap: writing a letter. This one's a toughie, but I think it's really important, and that's why I included it. We want to write a personal letter to your spouse. It's not a legally binding thing, like I never liked your cooking, or it's not a Festivus letter. And it's not a will or a trust either. Hopefully that exists in addition to this, but it can be a source of comfort. And you include this, it's sort of like the cover letter to the roadmap. And it has a few important things. It explains what the roadmap does. It says here is a list of all the financial documents where everything is located. You can provide some reassurance to them and say, look, I organized all of this because I love you and I don't want you to stress about this, and you're going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. So you can provide a lot of reassurance with that as well. The last thing that I would do in one of those letters, when they're in this cloud of grief, they look outside at the acre of land that you lived on and say, I can't mow this grass. I can't keep this up. And they'll want to turn their whole life upside down and sell the house. And it's just not a good idea. So as long as the grief is there, it's going to cloud their judgment. So you need to wait 6 months, 12 months, sometimes quite a bit longer than that. But I'd say minimum of 6 months before making a decision on any big life changes after a death. It's a big temptation. It happens all the time. They sell the house, they change everything, they make all these major decisions. It just adds a huge amount of stress. Oftentimes it's the wrong decision because their judgment is clouded by grief. These decisions can wait. That letter can serve as a gentle reminder to just take some time. Don't make big changes right away. And lastly, you want to keep it somewhere safe and secure. So if you have a safe at home, if you have a safe deposit box, also give copies to your trusted advisors. If you have a financial advisor, attorney, tax advisor, that way they can be like, oh yeah, I got you covered. We're going to be just fine. And they can help you with that as well, or help the surviving spouse as well. Last thing, I want to talk about what happens immediately after a spouse passes away or becomes incapacitated and the financial reins of the management of the household finances need to be handed over to the other spouse. Okay, there are a few things here just in my personal experience that I want to touch on. So right away after a spouse passes away, you're going to need copies of the death certificate. So that's one of the first steps that you do. Because like if a client calls us up and says, hey, my spouse died and I need to know what I need to do next, there's not much we can do until we have copies of a death certificate. So you're going to want to hand those for everything. You're going to need that for changes to Social Security, pensions, insurance policies, investment accounts, bank accounts. It doesn't take too long, but that can take a little while. So that's usually the first step, is getting multiple copies of the death certificate, because you're going to need it for pretty much everything. And then you want to notify, and you can do this first, but you want to notify your key advisors, professionals. So your financial advisor, you want to call up. You just want to, at the very least, you want to find out, what do I need to do next? And it's very helpful here to designate someone to help out, because these are really painful, stressful phone calls to make. They're often made in the days. Usually we get a call from a spouse prior to, like if they know that they're going to pass soon. And in the first few days after a spouse dies, we'll get that phone call. I think sometimes it's helpful to have a support person there, basically. So it could be a friend, a child, but someone to help you to go through and calling all of those people, because it can be so daunting and so painful to do that, because you're explaining everything that happened all over again multiple times, and that can be really, really hard. So you can, depending on your circumstances, it's not something you have to do right away either. You can wait a couple of weeks to do these things. Sometimes that's just not possible because you need to start taking care of these things right away just to pay bills and stuff. But certain relationships can wait. You don't have to notify everybody right away. You just want to focus on the need to know basis first, and then you can kind of branch out from there. All right, then once you have the death certificate, you've notified the insurance company, bank accounts, financial advisor, all of that, then you can get started on changing things over. So Social Security benefits, life insurance, filing a claim for that, changing how the accounts are titled. That's one of the things we help clients with all the time. Is client dies, has an IRA, and then the surviving spouse, that becomes their IRA. So we have to move it into the name of the other spouse. And then importantly, we want to make sure those bills are paid, especially if the surviving spouse isn't the one who handled the finances before. So we want to, again, just like we do for helping out with all of this stuff, in the first couple weeks, there really needs to be somebody there, a trusted child, a friend, some type of advisor, making sure that they're handling, ideally they'd be like a type A organized person, make sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, everything's organized, nothing's slipping through the cracks. We want to make sure that that is happening efficiently, and it can provide tremendous peace of mind if that part goes smoothly in the first few weeks. And then a little bit further down the road, you're going to want to meet with these advisors. So meet with your tax advisor. If you think about it, like the very basic thing that changes is your filing status. You go from married filing jointly to single filing status, and that can change your tax situation in a big way. So that's just one example, but there are meeting with your financial advisor. If you have hopefully a will, a trust, you need to discuss how those documents are going to influence what happens next. You need to talk to your estate attorney. Longer term changes like investment changes or some in-depth tax planning, that stuff can definitely wait, but you do want to meet with those advisors to get a handle on, okay, what do we do next? What's the next step here? And that's their job, is to help navigate what is their area of expertise as it pertains to your situation. But again, we want to avoid the big changes that are going to impact you for years and years to come, especially if you don't need to make those changes, like selling the house. That's a really important example. Again, fog of grief is a very real thing, and it takes some time, many, many months for that to clear. All right, to recap, Widow's financial roadmap includes 4 things: financial inventory, ensuring cash flow needs are met, money going in and money going out, setting up a password manager to transfer all the details of your digital life, and writing a letter to your spouse. You want to take care of all of these things now while you're healthy, and that will make life so much easier for your loved ones later. That's all for this week's episode of the Retirement Quick Tips. Well, not so quick today. Quick Tips podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week. I'm going to talk about there was a new headline study that came out that found that Americans are more afraid of this than death. We're going to talk about what that is because it has everything to do with your retirement. I hear it's public speaking. People are more afraid of public speaking than dying. That may be, but this new survey results really pinpoint something about retirement specifically that Americans fear more than death. So I'll talk about that next week and how you can avoid not feeling so fearful about that in your own life. All right. My name is Ashley Micciche. I hope you have a blessed week and I'll see you next time.